me. Hello everyone, here I am today in Santa Cruz, California with the very famous Mark Stephens. He has been teaching yoga for decades. Thank you so much, Mark, for doing this for my audience.
I'm happy to be here.
Yes. So we're going to get on a casual conversation about yoga, teaching yoga, particularly his book, which has been out for about 12 years now, I think 2010.
Yes.
2010 is when it was first published. And I wrote to Mark saying I want to talk to him about the book because it has been very, very inspirational for me reading this book. And incidentally, he told me that he has rewritten the first 3 chapters of this book and it's out for release soon.
In 2023, yes.
Okay, great, great. To start with, Mark, what made you rewrite these 3 chapters?
My publisher.
Okay.
But also my own interest in rewriting it. I would like to think that we are always learning. I think it is something that's at the heart of yoga. We read, even in the ancient literature, there's a fascination with knowledge, with understanding, and a passion about it never ending. Yeah. And there are different theories about what kind of knowledge is most important. I enjoy learning. And I would like to say that since I wrote the book, it was really written before it was published, but written in 2008 and 2009, 12, 13, 14 years ago. I would like to think that I've learned a lot since then by practicing, through teaching, interacting with my students, but also by studying a lot. And many of the things that I wrote in the book, thank you for appreciating my book, but there are a lot of things that I wrote in the book that I'm very happy that I have the opportunity to write again because I'm trying to get them correct. There's this idea in yoga, satya, truth, satya. Yeah. I think is an important idea.
Yes.
And I'm very surprised sometimes at how often we see, not only in the yoga world, but all in the world, people say many things that are not very true. We had a president before, he had this idea of alternative facts. Very different ideas about what is true. So anyway, I don't mean to make too much light of this, joke of this, but I feel I've learned a lot in the last 15 years, and I felt that I think there was a lot in the first edition of Teaching Yoga that could be stated more clearly and accurately. Right. And this is what I've attempted to do.
Great. It was really nice to hear. You know, when I read that you studied history and social history, so I was wondering, is that why it led you to start your book with sort of the philosophy and the history of how yoga really started and culminated and evolved over time? Because I haven't really seen too many books which start off with this, especially which is into teaching asanas or teaching technicalities and details, which is the latter part of your book.
I'm fascinated by origins. Like, I'm fascinated by the origins of the universe. I'm fascinated by astrophysics and trying to get deep into an understanding of how did this manifest. If I'm trying to understand a community, if I'm trying to understand a social movement, whatever it is, I'm trying to understand something in the world, I've discovered that it's helpful to understand where it came from. And if I want to understand yoga, I think it's very helpful to understand the historical roots of yoga and the philosophical developments in yoga from the very beginning, at least from as far back as we can discover these things. It sets the table, it sets the context, I think. That is the historical perspective and the philosophical foundations that I would suggest that there's not a history of yoga and there's not a philosophy of yoga, something that will be very clear in the new book.
Yes.
But I try to emphasize the plurality, the histories and the philosophies of yoga.
Exactly, yeah, there's just too many of them and too many origins and roots and lineages that we can talk about. So yeah, plurality.
At the same time, we want to, I think, for our students, for everyone, be able to paint a picture that gives us some understanding of what the histories and philosophies are, and we might paint that with a very broad brushstroke. If I were writing a book specifically and exclusively on yoga history or philosophy, which I may do, this is one of my upcoming books, it would attempt to give that richer flavor to the diversity of of currents, of thought and experience in the histories of yoga. I mean, even in the Vedas, we were talking about before you started recording, there are different philosophical perspectives that are articulated in the Rig Veda itself, and within the other three Vedas. There's, and in their companion books, in the Brahmanas and the Aranyakas, there are a variety of different philosophical perspectives that we find there, and thus it is all the way through. One can even dig deeply into the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and the Gita and find different ideas that support different philosophical or practical traditions.
Right.
And so, some of these scriptures are held holy deeply in different religions, Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, as you know better than I, I'm sure. But also within the various, we call them sects within. Not every Hindu is a Vishnuite or a Shaivite. There are different views, and there are many beyond those, especially when we start to look at the village level in Tantra. It's extraordinarily diverse.
Wow, this makes me want to ask, have you just studied Eastern philosophy in detail, or have you looked at the other philosophies, like maybe Romans or Taoists or?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I've studied these.
This was meant to be one of my first few questions, but then since we're taking it as a conversation, I think we've already, had a couple of questions before this. So I was going to ask you about the dedication that you mentioned in your book. Is something that I really, really loved, and I felt it's magical. Where you said, you dedicated to this unique inner voice that we all have, and the teacher that sits in your heart and sings and dances and plays, which I could really experience in your class today. So why do you think it's so important for teachers to really bring this from within?
Well, how to say, there are deep roots to this idea that and deep roots in India, not only in India, but deep roots in India and in yoga, that what's most precious is in here. What's most real is in here, within, and that much of what's to be discovered in life is about that we can access by tuning in inside. And so the idea that I'll suggest that the best teacher one will ever have is alive and well inside. And really much of this practice is learning about how to tune into and listen to and honor that inner teacher. And I think outer teachers are really important. I feel very, very lucky that I've had some really wonderful teachers in my life outside of me. But learning to trust ourselves, to have confidence in ourselves, learning to tune in and be guided from within, I think is really, really very much at the heart of it. It's something I learned from my very first teacher, Eric Schiffman, and he learned from his teacher, a guy who's not very well known, but he taught many of the most famous yoga teachers today. His name is Joel Kramer. Joel lives near here in Northern California. He and his partner, Diana Alstad, they wrote a book together titled The Guru Papers, Masks of Authoritarian Power, that also gets at this kind of question about why it's important to tune in inside and not just let someone outside of you tell you what to do. The Guru Papers should be read along with a book like Autobiography of a Yogi. Okay. I think there are good companion books. The Autobiography of a Yogi by Yogananda, it's a beautiful representation of a beautiful relationship that someone had with a guru and as a guru. Yes. So it doesn't always work out that way. And this is what Joel and Diana write about in their book, The Guru Papers. But Joel's thinking, the play idea, he came up with this idea, not me. In the mid-1970s, he wrote an article titled A New Look at Yoga. Another one called Yoga as Self-Transformation. And they were both published in the Yoga Journal, when the Yoga Journal was a journal, not just a glossy magazine with lots of pretty pictures, but a journal of yoga teachers. So anyway, he introduced the idea of playing the edge and playing in other ways. And so I bow to Joel in that, Joel Kramer.
Coming back to asanas, since you said that, a very related question. I'm going to read a bit from your book.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Okay, I think it's going to be interesting for them.
Okay.
Yeah. In the verse 33 of Pradapika, Swatma Rama tells us that there are 84 asanas which was taught by Lord Shiva, and then In the Grihanda Samhita, Shiva then taught 84 lakh asanas, so as many asanas as there are species of living beings. Now, so you say that the point is that asana is infinite, right? So underlying a practice that is about a process rather than attainment of some preconceived perfect form, which is exactly what we were talking about. So what do you imply when you say an asana is infinite? We'll just kind of elaborate a little bit on
There's no
end to it.
There's no
That's what I
limited.
mean.
Imagine, and I think the only limitation is your imagination. The various different forms that you could have in your body. I will suggest that that is infinite. That you start with the 15 postures of the Pradipika. It's only 15 forms, and some of them are. This is one,
Yeah.
and that's another one. There are various 5 of simple cross-leg sitting positions. So there's no end to the possibilities of how we can put force into our body, energy into our body, which is what Hatha Yoga invites us to do through the various tools and techniques. And I think that this is beautiful in the sense of how every way that we do position our body, what you might think of an asana, not just the strictly defined ones by lineages and traditions and books, that every different way we position ourselves, we feel something differently.
True.
Something else happens in us. And sometimes we feel things we've never felt before. So you might think of some exercise, not yoga, that you have not done for a long time, like riding a bicycle or going skiing or a big long run or something, or swimming a long distance, and you haven't done it for a long time, or maybe you've never done it. And after this, or maybe it is the next day, you go, oh, I didn't know that I had that muscle. Or I didn't remember that I had that muscle. Oh, but you had that muscle. In fact, we have over 500 just skeletal muscles, plus other muscles, smooth muscles and cardiac muscles, but 500 skeletal muscles under potential neurological control, neuromuscular control. Can you feel and activate each and every one of your 500 muscles? Most of us cannot. Is it possible to? Yes. If you don't have neurological or other pathologies, yes. And so the question is, that what happens with this is that by the possibility of putting yourself into infinite positions, each one of which awakens awareness in a part of your body, we open the possibility of getting conscious connection to every, essentially, cell of our being, or at least of our musculoskeletal being. And I'll suggest it goes further than this, and it kind of relates to nadi theory. Right, the theory of nadis, of running energy through our bodies.
Every energy channel that we have.
Yes, and at every place where nadis cross our chakras, and if they're dormant, if there's not consciousness there, the energy doesn't get through. Well, if you didn't remember that muscle was there or didn't know it was there, how would it get through? Because you're now doing an infinite array of things in your body, all these different forms that give you the opportunity to feel it and to breathe into it. And so the breath becomes this tool in which we can manifest consciousness, I think, to the tips of our toes, to the tips of our fingers, everywhere. That's the beauty of infinite possibility of form and action, Kriya.
That reminds me of Iyengar's famous quote, where he says, where he asks his students, where do you think the mind is? Have you heard that one?
I have, but please continue.
He says, where do you think your mind is? And then, people try to say, here, brain, whatever. And then he says, it's where you put it to. And then he says, your toe, you say. Yeah.
There are cells in our body that are very much carrying out independent, intelligent operations without direct reference back to the cognitive apparatus of the brain. The serotonin in your belly is digesting the food that comes into it, carrying out intelligent. The serotonin isn't doing the digestion, but it's the traffic cop down there. It's the traffic director telling the enzymes where to go, based on an intelligent assessment of what food particle content is there. Without reference back to the brain, serotonin is carrying out intelligent operations in your gut. And there are other examples of this cellular intelligence.
Wow, that's interesting. I
all
should
through our bodies.
read up about it more.
One more time.
I said that was interesting. I should read up more about this.
It's a fascinating thing with serotonin, where when psychiatrists prescribe antipsychotic, antidepressive, specifically medications, they typically prescribe another medication for cramping in the belly, because they're prescribing serotonin inhibitors. And the serotonin inhibitors don't know to go only to the serotonin in the brain. It goes to the massive concentration of serotonin in your gut, and you get cramps.
Okay.
Because it's the same, serotonin is the same here as it is here. It's not different chemicals. Serotonin is serotonin.
It acts on serotonin anywhere in your body.
Anywhere in your body.
Right.
And so this is the point of that, serotonin is a neurotransmitter, one of several different types of neurotransmitters. And anyway, there are other examples of cellular intelligence everywhere. I think the beauty of the idea of infinite possibility of form and asana of action is that there's infinite possibility for waking up. Yeah. And I think that part of this practice is about waking, if nothing else, I would hope that yoga is about waking up to being as
alive as
alive in this, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So you spoke about skiing and cycling and things like that, like different activities that we do. And this is sort of more for discussion. It's like not even a question, because I always wondered if asanas are something that just came down through, I don't know, divine wisdom or whatever spiritual attainment somebody had, and if they're meant to be beneficial because of that, or maybe, I don't know, the sages had some kind of scientific wisdom, versus an exercise which my gym instructor teaches me is also beneficial, is also healing, or like a Tai Chi class if I go to, or a sport is also healing. So then why is it that, yoga is looked up to something that is so therapeutic? Is it because asanas help us go more inward? What do you think?
I think that what allows us to go inward is intention.
Yeah.
And that the particular form and activity is less important than the consciousness that we bring into it. Complex asana practice and dynamic gymnastic acrobatic yoga practice is very much a product of the 20th century.
Right.
It's not it's not let's say within India, it's not colonial or pre-colonial. It's just not. It was very, 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 very limited in terms of physical form. But what was profound, in my sense of what India brought in with yoga, gave to the world with yoga, is that quality of consciousness that's brought into it.
More mindful movement. So
Consciousness and breath combined in the experience of being in the physical realm. Whatever that expression in the physical realm is, whatever form it happened or activity it happens to be. It was about being conscious in it and a sense of cultivating and moving energy, especially with breath. And so many, many other fields of athletic and recreational and cultural endeavor move the body and do all these things, but they're not...
too many of them that are...
They're generally not doing it with the qualities of consciousness and energetics that we get with yoga. Let alone the idea that it's a practice that's specifically about waking up, about whether you see waking up as Chitta-vritti Nirodha, still in the mind to wake up to something more profound and beautiful, or something else. We don't find the other non-yogic disciplines doing that very much.
Yeah.
Do they at all? Tai Chi is very much a meditation practice.
Yeah.
I think it generally doesn't have a significant breath element in it. Qigong brings more breath in, and the energetics are pretty powerful. Consciousness aspects, contemplative aspects, self-study aspects, less refined, I will suggest. With all loving respects to Qigong, incredible insights there. Yeah. And there are other approaches, we might think of them as Western approaches, that are profound tools for understanding and developing our being.
True.
Yoga, for me, connects dots, brings them into a holistic quality of consciousness, energetics, in the immediacy of being in a body, an organic body-mind. is an organic being. I think that yoga postural practices, I mean, coming from the heavens, maybe. We don't know. But we have pretty good sense that people experimented in their minds over millennia.
Yeah.
And gradually came to the realization that some things were beneficial and some things were not.
So how does one truly practice yoga as a way of life?
I was sharing earlier with your husband, who mentioned that he's he's becoming a farmer, which I suggested to him, I think is the highest form of evolution, especially if one started out in like tech or something and then becomes a farmer. That is a beautiful evolution, and along with a yoga shala with you outside of Bangalore.
And so you are invited to come stay.
I was mentioned to him that I would love to visit. So I have some land here in the mountains, and I have a small land with many fruit trees and other things I planted. It is a permacultural project that I'm trying to create there. And my point, which I'm losing my train of thought in relationship to your question, it's about how, for me, I get on my yoga mat almost every day. I do a morning pranayama meditation practice every day. I often do an afternoon asana practice. I now practice in the afternoons because I'm so old, 107 years old.
You need to use the sun's energy.
Yes, I need to be a little. So in the afternoon. But that's on the mat or on the cushion. Then there's the rest of life. Like we say, we're practicing yoga.
Yeah. For
how long? Hour or two on the yoga mat? Well, practice would suggest to me that it's a practice for the performance or for the doing of it in the whole way. Well, that's the other 22 hours of the day when you're not on your mat. Yeah. Whatever you're doing, maybe even sleeping. But so when I'm pruning my fruit trees, when I'm planting the garden, when I'm making food, when I'm hiking in the mountains or surfing or doing whatever I'm doing, I want to be as fully, wholly present in it all as I possibly can be, to sense in the whole of it all, and using my yoga tools, breathing, being relaxed, being present. Oh, pruning a tree, I'm holding here, I'm going there, I'm using my body, I'm trying to stay stable and at ease. There is sukham, I'm present in it. I'm noticing my mind. I ruminate, I'm thinking about my problems, my issues, or my taxes, or my whatever it is. How am I going to make these appointments, and I realize my mind. And so everything becomes part of the practice in a certain way. Not to the point that it interferes with the spontaneity of life. I hang out with my friends, but I also notice if I'm slumping, I try to sit tall so my systems are working well and my mind is working. I try to nourish my body with healthy food and people and air. But how to say, I want to live the fullest, simplest life that I can. And what I do on my mat contributes to that, as I'm repeating myself now, such that whatever else I'm doing, I hope, and if I'm not, I notice usually I will come and correct it, breathing deeply and consciously and trying to be receptive to what's happening. That just as I'm on my mat, I'm not trying to push through to everything and force things to happen, even though it's a forceful movement of Hatha Yoga, literal translation of Hatha, forceful. I'm trying to be receptive, to show up in the forms and ask them what they're saying to me today, or in this moment, as it is with anything, that kind of thing. I appreciate you coming here.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. So just to round that up, was your answer to that more like what you do on the mat also kind of prepares you for being more alive, present, and efficient for the rest of the day, and vice versa somehow?
Yeah, maybe? So Shakespeare said, brevity is the soul of wit. I am not witty, you are. But no, yes, I tend to be long-winded, like my books. What I do on my mat contributes to what I do off my mat. By being present, aware of my body, mind, breathing, more calm and present and receptive. I try to bring those qualities into every aspect of my life. I'm not always successful. Right. I'm human type being, not a yoga master. I'm a human being who does yoga.
That was so nice. That was a really nice roundup. I just wanted to end on that beautiful note, which is why I asked you that question.
Thank you. I
again.
appreciate that. You're very kind. Very kind, Marcia. Okay. You're still here.
was-
You're still awake.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so
You're
much, really,
welcome.
for doing this, and a heartfelt namaste.
Namaste.